Hello guys, welcome back. So I've managed to finish the tunnel. I'll give you a little look. All fully seam welded at the back end there, stitch welded at the front and the side, and all the floor pan. Lovely jubbly. I'll let you have a little look at the other side. Obviously it's much of a muchness. This side was a bit more difficult because any kind of traces of seam sealer or surface rust, to try and get it all off, obviously caused a bit of an issue for the welding, but it come out okay, and it's going to be covered in seam sealer as well, so once that jollops on there you won't see anything, and it will obviously be all painted up lovely. So that's that jobbed. I'll give you a little bit of a look underneath. Purposely made the bottom side of the tunnel a little bit longer than it needed to be, so I can fold that edge up and get a nice weld along the floor. I'll be making a rollover jig for this, so once I've done that I'll be able to flip it over and I'll be able to weld flat and level, or side on at least, because I hate welding upwards. I'm sure any of you that do a bit of welding yourselves will know that it's like molten lava falling on you, and it's just not very nice. So the least amount of that I can get away with doing, I will do happily. So yeah, that's an update on that. Next I'll be moving on to this chassis leg just here. I had to rebuild it obviously because it was bent, so that'll be in the next episode, so I will speak to you all later. A bit of a history on the original build of the car, because some people have been following me from the start on Facebook and Instagram and etc, but I know a lot of you won't have been so familiar with this car. So this is a Mazda RX-8 rear cradle, and I've grafted a BMW diff into it. So the reason for that is the final drive ratio. I would have loved to have used the Mazda RX-8 diff because I've heard they're relatively strong, but also they're factory LSD, which would have saved me a bit of money. So I've ended up with a NSD, a no slip diff. I've just welded it all up, but the final drive ratio in the gearbox is 1:1 in 5th gear, whereas a normal 5th gear or 6th gear in a gearbox would be like 0.8:1, which is like an overdrive ratio. And with the RX-8 diff, which I think was a 4.44, it would have given me a top speed of about 80 or 90 mile an hour, which would have been perfectly okay because we have speed limits of 70 miles per hour. But when I was in centre pod, or you know, drag racing, drifting, whatever I was doing, it just wouldn't have been enough for me. So that's what I've done. Because I've done that, I had to get custom drive shafts made by Dave Mack Prop Shafts, which were brilliant. That was a great service. I think it was 2 weeks from me contacting them and sending them some specs to them turning up at my door ready to fit. All the CV gators were fitted, greased up, powder coated lovely, splines were perfect. I've obviously got BMW splines on the outsides, and then Mazda splines, sorry, BMW splines on the inside and Mazda splines on the outside, so I had a mix and match. But yeah, it was no drama, and they come with a lifetime and unlimited torque and horsepower warranty. So if I manage to strip a spline or snap a shaft, which is probably highly unlikely with the sorts of power I'm going to be running, they'll be replaced free of charge, which is great. It's another thing I was going to explain to people as well is another thing that acted negatively in the demise of this car was the rear coilovers. They're Racing Logic, which is I think they're like an Australian company or New Zealand, somewhere like that. Quite popular in that area for Japanese import cars. These are obviously for a Mazda RX-8, which is a lot heavier of a car than the Escort was or will be. So the rear spring rate on these is about 10 kilograms per millimetre. So for every 10 kilograms of force downwards the car presses onto the springs will compress a millimetre. That's quite a high spring rate, especially for a car that weighs next to nothing. I think the only real weight that I had in the car was the fuel tank in the back here, and I had a little racing cell battery which wasn't that heavy, to be honest, and the cage obviously adds a bit of weight, so it was just too hard. It was like cart springs on the back, and it was very skittish, so any little bump and I was finding I was losing traction. That and the anti-roll bar on the rear and the welded diff and ditch finders, although that is a Bridgestone tyre which didn't fare too well. Just needs sorting out, so it'll be done in the near future, probably towards the end of the build. I think I'm going to try and go for a 3 or 4 kilogram per millimetre spring.